Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call the July 21st, 2026 meeting of the MCPAB board to order. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for being here, both in person and virtually. I'm gonna read this. This meeting is being held virtually and in person and is hosted by the Utah Department of Agriculture and Food in Taylorsville. Public notice of this meeting was provided on the Utah Public Notice website. This meeting is being recorded. For additional information, to make a suggestion for agenda items or to contact board members or staff, send an email to cannabis@utah.gov. All right, let's see. What do we need to do? We have some new faces at the table. Maybe we should make some introductions. I see Brandon's not here, but let's start with Des.
Hi, my name is Desiree Hennessy. I'm new here. I'm one of the new directors of the licensing board. That's all.
Congrats.
What's the like?
Welcome.
What is the licensing board?
Oh, life, I thought you
Yeah.
said life living. I'm like, what the licensing board? That makes sense.
The
You're getting
special
paid to
products
live life.
licensing board they created
Licensing
in
board.
the 2026
Okay,
legislative
yeah.
session.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
So
So I'm off of your board.
Des has officially resigned from the MCPAB board.
It's true. And now,
Sad and good news.
if I
Yeah.
talk in the meeting, you can tell me to shut up. So that's the best news.
JD wasn't
Hard.
just having fun with you.
Nice to meet everybody. My name is Mark Fitu. Worked with UDAF for the last 3 years, worked with a lot of the licensees, worked with JD. But also I'm a new member of the board, so excited to work with you guys and see you guys more often.
Welcome, Mark. Thanks for
Welcome.
being here.
Thank you.
Who's your
Awesome.
third member?
Her name is Veronica and she might be on here if she's
I do hear,
changing,
Yeah,
moving
she's on
here,
there.
so.
Yep.
can you promote her as a panelist?
Yeah.
And is Melissa online?
Yeah, it's
And
Melissa.
is Anthony coming? Have we heard from him?
Also will be.
I know they were both gonna be virtual.
Okay, thank you. All right.
There's Veronica.
Is Blake going virtual too?
I'm Veronica Goodhart. I'm one of the new directors for the Specialized Product Board as well. I'm from Palm Springs, California, and I will be moving to Utah in 2 weeks.
Welcome.
Welcome, Veronica.
Welcome.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
All right, well, moving on, I guess we will look at the June 2026 minutes. Has everyone had a chance to look over those?
Make a motion to approve the June 2026 minutes.
I'll second.
Brilliant. So approved. We need to do an aye.
I think you can
Anything?
just do a general.
All fair say aye.
Or say aye.
In favor?
Aye.
Brilliant. Yeah, so as far as administrative business, the board, we have some bylaws to go over next month. Or between now and next month, is that what needs to happen?
Correct. So with the legislative changes from HB 389 being in effect, we need to just do some technical stuff on the bylaws, like removing mentions to DHHS. There should be no substantive changes. So we can provide a draft to that well in advance of the next meeting, so can all have a chance to review.
Brilliant. I'm looking forward to reading through those and seeing the changes. Other administrative business, obviously Des has resigned from the board, but I want to make sure and thank her for her work on behalf of everyone for her years of service, and we appreciate all she did.
Here.
Yeah.
And then I think we may have mentioned it, but I have not done it yet, but we met with the representatives from Ryan's Law. And they gave us some materials just recently, so I will forward those on to the board members so that they can see what information was presented to us.
Do you plan to pursue that change again?
I don't know, I mean, I'm happy to. They seemed very persistent on it and that they would help us in any way, including flying in and doing testimonies and whatnot, or meeting with legislature,
And
so.
remind me, that's to allow like use in the
Hospital.
hospitals, like at end of life, right?
Yes.
And he
Okay.
had a lot of good documentation. He looked at me. So I was gonna talk, sorry.
You're good, please
as
do.
he had a lot of good documentation as far as like federal laws, how it's never been challenged, there's never been any issues and so.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll be interested to see how rescheduling plays into that, if at all, because there's obviously still a gap between what's approved to be administered in a hospital and what's not yet approved to be administered in a hospital. And I would imagine that not what most people are going to be looking for in a hospital setting is going to be what's been approved by the FDA currently, right? Because it's usually higher CBD products as opposed to THC products. And I imagine THC products are what would likely be looked for, look to be consumed in
Yeah,
at that stage. So I think that's interesting. I mean, I think it's going to be interesting to see generally what happens with rescheduling. The hearing concluded, but there's a long way to go before the final order from the final decision from the DA administrator comes down. So.
I agree. I think, yeah, rescheduling could definitely change whether we should pursue it or not anyways. So.
Yeah. I mean, I think
Makes
once
sense.
you get a chance, I think if it ever, if cannabis ever becomes covered by insurance, and I think you make an even better argument for why it should be allowed. So hopefully that'll help with the arguments.
I'm hopeful.
Although I will say some end of life care would not necessarily be high THC. It
Yeah,
would
I'm sure some
it'd
people,
be
yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it'd be a case by case.
Yeah.
Situation.
That's good.
Great. I'll make sure and forward those after the meeting then, so you all have some time to look over them. All right, if we don't have any other administrative business, will you move on to UDAF updates from Mr. James? I don't see Miss Leila, so we'll leave it to
Yeah,
you,
no,
Cody.
I'll handle it all there. So Cody
Thank you.
James, I'm the Deputy Director of the Specialized Products Division. Everything I wrote down, I kind of jumped all over places. I remembered stuff, so I'll try and keep it all together as I go through this there. I'm gonna be a lot shorter than some of these other times people gave reports, but let me give you guys the updates on patient counts. As you guys used to get from DHHS. At the end of June, we were at 115,472 patients. It's an increase of 1,382. The RMP count total went down to 1,189, and the PMPs were at 97, which actually was no change in that number overall. So moving on to the next thing that I've got written down, and I'm just going to speak briefly on this because I know the groans and the looks come pretty easy when we talk about the inventory control system. I was told today that they're still planning on an October timeframe. However, that they are in the process of hiring a new person as the program lead to do this. So they've offered that job. She should be taking that soon. So it depends maybe a little bit on her coming in, being a little bit more of a specialist in this type of thing and what she says to go on there. But again, what I was told as of today is that October is still a time frame for that. Next thing is you guys already kind of discovered with the new licensing board that is taking place, and they've already kind of introduced themselves, but I'll go a little bit further on this. As Mark mentioned, Mark Fitu has been part of our program for the last couple of years there, but he was hired. The department decided to split these into three different types of categories. Mark is the industry standards director. Des is the public health director, and Veronica is the administrative appeals director. So pretty much the idea behind that is that those will be, for lack of a better term, the chair of each type of meeting that they deal with. But every decision, or for the most part, every decision will be done as a board, and will need a majority vote to move anything like that there. So they'll always be working together, but the specialists or their expertise will be what determines who's dealing with what. As was mentioned, obviously Des has to step down from MCPAB. We've already started talking about the process of getting that replacement, what that should look like overall, and making sure that the board moves, the MCPAB is able to move forward as smoothly as possible there. So, but as always, when things like that happen, there's always that kind of domino effect that sometimes takes a little bit of time. Talking about the new board and what their duties really will be. They're taking a lot over from what DHHS used to be, and they'll be dealing directly with this board, actually looking at the statutory language that this board will fall underneath them overall to make kind of some decisions. Same with the CUB. The CUB will be kind of a different aspect in the future where they will make recommendations to this licensing board, but the licensing board will be the determiner of if those applications get approved or not. And then obviously their own licensing board. So our renewals and new license and things like that falls underneath them as well. During the first, 6 months, maybe more type thing, that you're not going to see a whole lot of changes from the department as they get their feet wet and learn how to do some things. We'll just slowly but surely work with them. We'll probably handle the majority of the stuff at the beginning here, as we always have, and then slowly but surely, like I said, hand it off to the board and always be there for any help that they need in any public meeting stuff or any aspects that way. With that being said too, right? With the HHS moving over, and they've all fully moved over in the last couple of weeks, things look a little bit different. Where everything was put underneath the HHS or everything was put under UDAF, things obviously are under UDAF, but they've spread some things around here. For instance, Jeremiah will pretty much be the person over MCPAB, and again, it'll be a slower kind of easy process. We don't want to throw anybody just right out into the deep waters right off of that. Trevor will slowly but surely be helping, but he'll also start to move away from that, and he's actually been assigned to the Department of Agriculture's policy division. So he'll be working mostly with our division, but he could be kind of doing some other stuff. But right now, he's all on board 100% with us there, and then also helping with this type of thing. Sarah Lelos, as well as, I just forgot Brenda's last name.
Forget Brenda's last name.
Yeah, Holt. Yeah, Holt. Brenda Holt will be underneath the licensing board, mostly helping with the CUB, as well as some of the other aspects on the patient side of things. And Carissa will actually be staying with us in the regulatory aspect of things and helping with some of those audits that happen at pharmacies and with RMPs and things like that. Everybody else is spread even further out. Sarah Dash, who works a lot on the website and some of that things, she's actually been moved to the Department of Agriculture's marketing team, but her will be mostly focused on our side of things, the licensing board and specialized products there, but she answers to those in marketing. A couple of the others, obviously the patient support aspects, they actually have gone over to the accounting side of things, and they'll be on the phone there and be doing the patient support over there. And then a couple of the others will be working on EBS, maybe be going over onto the ICS side of things there. So it's kind of spread throughout there, but it encompasses thing. There is a pretty good way to communicate and keep communications going. They'll have access to the cannabis room and have an open communication, do that. But pretty much we have, like I said, we have free access to talk to anybody you want, and everybody's priorities are the specialized products division and, for the most part, medical cannabis on those things. So there will be a few changes I mentioned of people and duties, but like I said, it'll pretty much stay the same and slowly change over time there. So
Glad to see you sticking around, Trevor.
Yeah.
A couple other things just to mention. So the independent pharmacy application, it's pretty much ready to go. We have just sent it over to the board members to do a quick review there, so we can get out as quick as possible. As you guys may recall from last year, it took a little bit longer. We started to push that January time frame to get it out, and don't want necessarily that to happen again. We don't believe it will, but we're kind of want to get that there. And so once we gave them a short turnaround time to get that, so we imagine that application for that independent pharmacy will probably go out the first day or two of August and be open for 30 days. So, and then they can start the review process. The last thing that I want to bring up is the DEA and rescheduling. Dr. Forsyth and I actually had a meeting with the DEA the other day that had sent a couple of people in to discuss. It's very interesting. They came with a piece of paper that was kind of their directives and kind of how they're supposed to do it. It was a whole page and a half long there. They don't know a whole lot that they're learning, but that the cool thing that they was very much willing to learn, and they had a lot of questions based on how Utah does things versus other states. A lot of in the testing stuff aspect and what we allow as far as, some of the cannabinoids that we know are there and we can test for. And so they're allowed in smaller things like that, or smaller limits. And
Specifically, are we talking about synthetics?
yeah, yep. And so Dr. Forsyth officer was able to explain that to them, and they walked away, at least saying, okay, that makes sense, and I'm sure they'll have other questions. Just yesterday, they had some other questions they sent to me as far as production amounts and some enforcement or some rules and statute stuff that we're answering there. But other than that, it was a good meeting, and it looks like there's not going to be much that stands in the way of them being able to allow registration in that
Did they
form. So,
indicate when they plan to start inspections here in Utah?
they did not. They just wanted to stay in contact. So, like I said, the paperwork they had was a page and a half, and coming from the federal government, I thought that's not a lot of information. So, but,
Yeah, I mean, I can just chime in generally, just given my new role and that I've been managing the DEA registrations for Vireo. We've seen inspections in one state already, but they've started inspections in generally a handful of states, from what I understand, on the East Coast. And the inspections started out, like the first one we had in Florida was 3 to 4 hours. The last one we just had was only 20 to 30 minutes. I think what the DEA has been finding out is that state medical cannabis programs might be even more heavily regulated than the DEA. So there's not as much concern. And they went from asking for things that you might submit as part of like a licensing application to now just very pinpointed into your registration application. So yeah, if they give you any indication of when inspections will start here, it'd be great for the industry to kind of get a heads up. But yeah, the guidance I've been giving people is if you can pass a state inspection, you can pass a DA inspection. It's just, it's also probably something for us as a board to think about in terms of recommendations that we may be making to maybe more closely align Utah's medical cannabis program with the requirements of the DEA, because in some ways there are things that are maybe regulated differently. And Blake could probably speak to that as well, since he's probably dealt with both sides of it.
There's separate fees involved with those inspections.
No fees. I mean, we had to pay like application fees for each application that we filed. But no, there has not been any sort of registration fee or anything like that. And similar to Cody's point, it's been as much of a fact-finding mission for them as it has been a confirmation mission to register you. So
They have issued fines in 3 different states for businesses. Most of them are pretty nominal. They are paying for their program through their fees and their fines. So it would not surprise me that if they come in and they will issue fines to anyone who's participating. The question ultimately is, are the fines less than what we're going to save in 280E? And if the answer is yes, then it probably was a good investment. But there is one company in Mississippi that got shut down as a result of DEA audit. Their fines were just almost $3 million. So they can't afford that. So they should.
I also find it kind of a bit of a, I don't know, I find it a bit of a bait and switch on the part of the federal government to say that as long as you were state licensed, as long as you were following, and in good standing in the state where you're operating, that was the linchpin to becoming registered. And now the DEA is coming in and, issuing fines and different things because you're not in line with what the federal government requires without any sort of grace period, no, nothing. I find that to be a bit disingenuous, but the federal government's been disingenuous in relation to cannabis for 100 years. And we've seen that too, in the state of Florida, like here, right? We allow our pharmacies to do transfers, pharmacy to pharmacy. They don't recognize that. They've asked each of the Florida dispensaries if they're able to do that. Now, they haven't come away with, issuing any sort of action on that, but I find that to be wholly disingenuous, but not altogether surprising, because that's who the DEA is.
Well, and they're an enforcement body, not a rulemaking body. So the fact, to Cody's point, that they had a page and a half of instructions, they have a lot of liberty, and a lot of the enforcers have liberty of how they've decided to enforce. And so
yeah, it'll be state by state and inspector by inspector for sure.
I do think Utah is probably in a very good place as far as that goes. We have a pretty rigorous program. So Cody, smile a lot because that's been also helpful when departments have been very helpful with the DEA.
Yeah, and to James, it was more like of a fact-finding mission. They came to learn and things, and it was a good conversation, and looks like that's the same reasons that I'm getting the emails, and it's only been one email, and pretty easy stuff to report on, stuff that I usually report on annually to the legislature anyway, so it's there. So hopefully the meeting went well, and it sounded like the plan to move forward went well, and they took everything we said really well. So we'll see how that goes, but other than that, I don't think I have anything else to think of.
Thanks so much. All right, we'll move on to committee updates. Patient Access Committee, do you guys have anything to present?
We do not. We need another member now.
Yes, we do need to replace your member.
We don't have anything new this month.
Okay,
Generally speaking, there's been enough shakeup with a lot of things that it seems like if it seems like we're stutter stepping a little bit, I think that's just probably normal. It'll take a couple months for everybody to sort of get.
need to figure out routines
Yeah,
and
so
how to meet and figure out schedules. It's a lot.
my point is I wouldn't worry about it.
You're
Yeah.
not judging me.
No.
No, that's.
Just silent, just silent.
Chair has resigned.
You guys just have chair of your committee resign, and I think that's one thing is for the Policy and Rules Committee, we will now need someone else from your committee to serve as, your chair, so then they can be on the Rules Committee. But other than that, yeah, I think it's to be expected in some ways.
Yep.
To slow down a little bit and be a little more intentional as these committees get off the ground, so.
Thank you.
All good. Okay, next is industry.
Yeah, we had a chance to meet with a bunch of other members of industry. After last month's meeting, we gave them a kind of a preview or a review of what we discussed and any decisions that we made. And then we opened the floor to folks, and the number one kind of common theme that came up was advertising. And so I think next month we will put forth some recommendations in relation to advertising. Some good ideas, some that you've definitely heard before, Alan, and other folks, chimed in. So we'll bring that forward. And then I think the general idea is as we move through the rest of the summer and into the fall to continue to do a review of all the laws and the rules to see if there's a way that we can, maybe more right-sized regulation for industry, but also thinking about it in line with Schedule 3 as well. So you'll probably see more agenda items and topics from us, but it's been good so far. I can't remember exactly how many people from industry we had, but we definitely had all segments represented, from verticals to semi-verticals to, I don't know if we had any semi-verticals. We had verticals and independents for sure. So, and from all, cultivators, processors, pharmacies. So it was good.
I feel like we had like 16.
Yeah, something like that. So it was good,
Okay.
good participation. Yeah. So that's been good so far. We will have we're supposed to have our next meeting in 2 days, but I have a conflict, which I was gonna tell you about.
Okay.
So I won't be able to make it. So we'll probably do that meeting via email, but you can expect that we would like to put it on the agenda for next month for advertising. We'll circulate a memo amongst our other members of industry to get feedback. Trevor, I want to talk with you about just some small research you can pull together for me, mostly just statutory research here in Utah. Not too concerned about what other states are doing on this, because advertising is a mixed bag all over the country, and I don't think it's worthwhile to do too much of that, but I'll reach out to you. But otherwise, yeah, no, we're happy with how it started, but I'll let Blake speak as well.
Yeah, one of the other things, so on the advertising piece, I agree completely with JD. How every other state does it doesn't make sense necessarily for what we want to have happen here. So we just need to come up with the right way to do it in Utah for Utahns. So the second thing I would say is one of the other issues that came up is questions around testing. So that leads me to a question for you, Cody. Do we have an update on the other independent lab and how they're moving forward?
So probably the update I can give really is because of the law change in May that made the last licensing board not be able to do anything, and then waiting for the hiring of this, was we weren't able to go to the June licensing board meeting, as some of you know, for your renewals and something like that, but they are on the agenda for the next one.
So they're waiting for approval for a license.
And
Okay.
then once there's 2 independent labs, does the state lab bow out?
Yep, and we will just be the regulatory and verifying.
Yeah, you guys will basically be regulating that, like from the lab perspective, you'll be regulating them, verifying their results as needed.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. I will continue to have some questions around that as we get through. So industry has some concerns, just timing, getting another lab in place will be helpful. Yeah, general stuff, So that's pretty much everything I got.
Okay, is everything for us?
Great, thank you. That's really awesome to hear how many people showed up. I like hearing it. Research and education.
So Nanette and I met with Valerie Anahu, who I believe is on the call or on the meeting today. And we had a brief meeting talking about the subcommittees that were formed here at MCPAB, the Medical Cannabis Research Education Committee, which is a subcommittee of the CMCR, is actually forming similar committees. So it's actually going to lend itself very well to having ongoing conversations, particularly for research and education. So we're actually going to set up like a monthly opportunity for members from our subcommittee and members from the corresponding committee of MCREC to have these conversations. And I think there's already been some ideas for polls, some interest in, working together on polls to gather more information from the program. So we can provide updates at this meeting as things arise.
Brilliant. I think I was trying to remember if I talked about anything else, but yeah, that's about it. I'm really looking forward to the bridge between the two.
Part of the goal to make sure that the research and education goals of each committee is sort of aligned so that they can each be pushing in the sort of the same direction.
Yes, and so that we're more aware of what is going on in both locations and, with MCREC, which I recently found out I'm chairing, is we're moving forward on the different research topic areas. Like we just finished the ALS document, and that's going through final review and edits, and we're getting ready to start additional work on another topic. So it's moving forward, but just opening lines of communication and really using each other's strengths, not only for dissemination of information, but gathering of information. I think our committee is a little better at some aspects, and CMCR has probably better opportunities for other aspects. So working together, maybe we can do a better job in all areas.
Awesome.
Yeah, I kind of think me getting in there and understanding what they're talking about a little bit more and bringing that to the table and making sure that we know what MCREC is doing, because I don't feel like we present a lot of information on them either. So I think, yeah, that bridge will be really helpful.
Yeah, and we're actually going to be in MCREC bringing on a new member from like social services onto our committee, so social work. So it'll be another really great contribution.
Yeah.
An area of expertise for the board. Yeah.
I remember, I thought you said last meeting that the next condition you guys were gonna look at was sleep. Did I misremember that?
That is the one we're starting to work on now.
Excellent, excellent. Because I think that lends itself, unless and until they change the structure around qualifying conditions, and obviously I know that's a priority for this board. I feel like the work you guys do there and any, support you can for adding individual conditions, I think would be really helpful.
And that actually brings me to what I was going to ask. If you guys are open to giving suggestions, one of the things that we talked about in the recent MCREC meeting was, as we're starting to do this systematic review of the literature, we are trying, obviously this can get very big, very quick. So if there are primary endpoints or search terms or things that we as a committee feel we would like included in that search, please let me know. If there's different aspects of sleep, are we mainly interested in sleep maintenance or sleep induction? Should we open it up to insomnia? Should we open it up? There's a lot of different ways you can do a systematic review, and the strength of your terms really defines where it goes.
So, let's talk offline at some point. I have a study going on at the University of Auckland for sleep induction. And then I have a study at Ole Miss University going on right now just around overall sleep performance. And so one of my general concerns that is out there is just literary searches alone don't always get you what is the most cutting edge. I recently spoke at directors with the Mayo Clinic, and they loved to quote everything they knew about cannabis, but it was all from about 2017. And so they were so far behind on what we actually know now that it was pretty actually illuminating, but also really unhelpful because even their perceptions were just completely wrong with what, what we know now.
And that also can be improved by setting up a different type of search. So if you're limiting yourself exclusively to clinical trials versus doing like a cohort study, a cohort will pick up.
Well, one of the things I would be interested in potentially having is we could potentially get a collaboration going. So it's not just a literature search, but somebody could maybe co-author some of the studies that's already out there, and it gives us definitive data that's ongoing and current now.
Yep.
So.
Yeah.
Valerie wanted to say something.
Are we okay?
Yeah, go ahead,
Please
Valerie.
do.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Valeria Nanu from the Center for Medical Cannabis Research. I just wanted to add a few things. Misty and Nanette kind of covered everything, but I wanted to also add that our hope is to also streamline things a bit, Blake. Um, as I think you know, a lot of the research that goes on can also be repetitive. And then also with education. So part of it is that, yes, we definitely want to bounce ideas off of each other and help collaboratively do education. But there may be things that we are able to expand on or educate about that you guys may not have time or the bandwidth to cover. So that's also part of our goals in trying to collaborate with everyone on throughout the subcommittees that we plan. We hope that we can help streamline things and maybe get to bring forward some education across the spectrum of not only clinical research, but also from your guys' side, more along policy, regulatory approach, standards, and methods. So that's also one of our goals. And then in addition, part of what we hope to do is because this board developed based off of the Cannabis Research Review Board being sunset, we pulled that over and then looked at kind of some of the things that were maybe rate limiting or that we hoped we could kind of do outside of kind of being within the government regulations of required research review. So to your point now, we can expand the types of studies that we consider valuable and relevant based on the actual criteria that we set. So it should allow for us to bring in more current and cutting edge data to support people understanding that. Because you're right, a lot of those aspects are quite old. So our hope is to kind of bring forward some of that data and information for people to consider and be aware of. And then we also want to interact with the public a bit more. So, within the CRB, they used to have, the public join the meetings. We won't be doing that, but we hope that this is a great way for us to collect public data, public surveyed information, public questions, industry questions, pharmacy questions. We're here to kind of have a soft landing place for everyone to bring those things together. And hopefully we can collaborate a bit more on pulling everyone's questions and also information together so that people have a more useful set of resources. That's all.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks,
I think
Valerie.
we also talked about education that was meant for patients, so that was understandable and readable, kind of. I think what Valerie had mentioned, something about being on like an 8th grade reading level. That's the point for information to be understood by the public. So kind of something like that.
Yeah, we'll be doing educate 3 different types of education, research summaries that are more usable for researchers, specifically scientific minds. Maybe some of you guys within the industry that kind of value that aspect, and then providers. But then we'll also do a summary that is more for providers and patients who have the caliber or capacity to understand. And then we'll do just public summary that's more of an 8th grade reading level to make sure we're serving each area that might be impacted.
Valerie, thank you. Thanks for the comments on that. I want to make 2 just quick points around this. Sorry, this is not my committee, but I have a lot of feelings about it. So 2 main things. You're going to hear the semi-socialist side of me that says, look, ideally, if the research group, us, the departments, the licensing board, we all get aligned, it should make it really clear of how we need to have legislation move to do the right thing for patients, because we have data, we have policy, we have invested people who are in here, representation for all the patients, for industry and everything else, and we're all in the same place, going in the same direction. Traditionally, there have been silos that have occurred, and those silos actually make it really hard to move anything forward. The second thing is, I would just also encourage every group to rely on experts that are out there on different things. One of the biggest challenges we've had with the sleep is there's pretty good evidence to suggest that THC will help people fall asleep. And in every single study that's out there right now where they're doing placebo and double-blind studies, every single one of the patients can tell whether or not they have the placebo because of the head change associated with THC. So great, you did a double-blind study. It's worthless because you have to actually eliminate every single placebo. So it's just how we think about doing cannabis research is slightly different. And there's some different aspects to thinking about how we do that don't meet what we would consider traditional FDA models. And so, but that doesn't mean the value is different. It just means we have to be really smart about how we organize that data and those studies.
Well, I think that's one of the reasons that the FDA has struggled with cannabis for so long. It's why they've never touched CBD. They had years and years to touch it and they never did.
That's right.
Whole plant medicine does not lend itself to traditional FDA approval, right? And it's why the way they reschedule is so vitally important, right? It's not just whether they reschedule, it's how they reschedule cannabis that's going to be super important. Now, if you're asking me, they just need to rip the Band-Aid off and deschedule cannabis completely, but we don't need to go into that. I will speak for like a half hour on why that's the better move. But if this is the route they're going to go down, they're going to have to figure out how, in my estimation, to deal with stuff that's going to be administered in hospital settings, stuff that's going to go through FDA approval, and the other lane of cannabis that has existed, whether it be medicinal only or whether it be adult use. And if you agree with the great Dennis Perone, all cannabis use is medicinal. They're going to have to deal with that. And I think that's what they're attempting to try to grapple with right now. I think that's what the hearing was meant to drive at. Because medical cannabis has already been rescheduled, right? Like by final order of the federal government, medical cannabis is already a Schedule III substance. Adult use cannabis, and someone still needs to explain to me what the difference between adult use and medical is. I've never been able to really understand it. But that's the part that they need to figure out too. And I think that's what they're struggling with. And I imagine this ends up bleeding into all other parts of how you look at this, is they aren't quite sure yet how to handle it. Now, if you believe, what if you're reading the kind of between the lines, I imagine they're going to issue an order that reschedules cannabis generally. But that remains to be seen. And there's some legal challenges that still have to be, cleared away for that to happen. But I imagine that's part of what, layers itself into all of this. Cannabis is not in many ways like other medicines, but I don't think that should hold us back from trying to find a standard that it can be, appropriately judged at.
So to that point, it's a difference between policy and science, right? Because there aren't a lot of answers on the science side for some of this. There are some, but to the idea that we treat all medicine the same, that's a policy issue. And that should be based on what we lack so far.
Well, I think one thing we know for sure scientifically, and it was said over and over and over again in the initial rescheduling documents, is the general safety that cannabis, shows as a medicine, right? I mean, at the end of every section in that 200 and some pages the federal government released unredacted, it talks about the lack of, significant, negative events and stuff associated with cannabis. But also I'm not on the side that you all are on, but I mean, it treats so many different things in so many different forms. It just doesn't lend itself to this nice, neat little box they want to fit it in. And so that's why it's going to be very important as to how it all happens. But research is going to play a major component in that, because you're still going to have to prove some of those same things. You're going to have to prove safety, you're going to have to prove efficacy, all those things that you guys are, you have to do for normal drugs, but it's just going to be different. And I think getting people to understand the differences sometimes can be difficult. But here in Utah, we've already laid the groundwork for treating cannabis like any other controlled substance. It's in the law in probably half a dozen places where it says that exact phrase. So I think, we should continue to push for those things, but also understanding that there's some things about cannabis that, are even less harmful and less dangerous than, even Schedule 4 and 5 drugs too. So you got that going for you.
Valerie would like to make a comment.
Please, go ahead, Valerie.
Blake, thanks for bringing this up. I think that is something that the MCREC board has talked about, and part of what we hoped to discuss with that's kind of why we brought in the panel we brought in for our symposium. The FDA is doing a lot of work looking at the actual biases across plant medicines. So that's why we hope to be able to kind of expand the types of trials that we look at and consider. But yeah, even with the rescheduling, it, like you say, it doesn't affect policy. What is going to kind of be more impactful is the work that we see with like ibogaine and psilocybin, because you actually do have the same biasing that occurs with those types of products. With the MDMA assisted therapy program, that was one of the largest issues that the FDA brought up. They did do the work to address that, but then that bias was brought up again. So they will forever be chasing their tails on looking for a structure or format that doesn't take into consideration that with entheogenics and hallucinogenics, all of these plants, including cannabis, patients are aware. And that kind of either dilutes the data or it's something that we have to consider where we look at the patient's quality of reporting and weigh that. So I think it's going to become a broader discussion, particularly with this like fast tracking of ibogaine, that we'll hear a bit more on how the FDA will be looking at that in a different light, because there's a lot of people challenging it. So, but to your point, it is something we consider within the committee, and we also appreciate the value of that. So thank you for bringing it up.
I think more than ever, the committee is open to really keeping the information that is disseminated as current and as useful as possible. So I think that those of us who transferred over from the old committee to the new committee, the reason we did it is because we wanted to improve on the way things were done in the past. And that there was a lot of work put in historically, but the information is coming just at a completely different rate than it was 5 years ago. I mean, studies are exponentially increasing now. So to keep up with that, we have to be more inclusive and less exclusive. So
that means maybe lending itself to like looking at studies from outside the United States and from other sources as well, or is it still going to be USA based?
Even sitting on the old committee, I don't believe we ever excluded international studies as long as they met the study criteria, like the clinical trial criteria. I don't recall anything that I sat on ever being excluded because it was international. There were studies that weren't clinical trials, and that was the big thing that you got excluded for in the past, was it not being a randomized controlled clinical trial. That was our walls.
The biggest. Yeah,
and in reality, there just wasn't any. So it was very hard to collect information because you had a very small sample of studies to pick from. So
And multiple countries around the world do not believe in placebo groups anyway. They always challenge against the gold standard for any new drug class. So those would automatically get excluded, at least in most US settings, just because how do you know if it's actually effective unless you can challenge it against a placebo and not have bias? But many countries don't use that as the criteria.
Sure. And the nice thing about doing the systematic reviews like we're doing now is you can include those things, but you can weight them differently.
Yeah.
Because obviously the studies can be included, but weighted a little bit less if they don't include those controls.
Yeah, no, I think that's right.
Yeah, so. Whereas before they wouldn't even be discussed.
Yeah, that's right.
So.
Brilliant. Okay. We had some public comment about the patient research and education. Will you state your name and who you represent?
This is the third meeting I've been with him, and I'm really trying to catch up as quick as I can and just understand how the current ecosystem is working for the cannabis program. And I'm very impressed and very excited about what's going on. And I wanted to find out, is this the one that I'm supposed to be able to be a member of? The committee, you said for a patient.
Oh, I think we talked about adding you to a committee. Was it the patient and was it? Okay, yeah,
It's gonna say, my background is in education and research.
Brilliant.
Just say
Okay.
that.
we'd love to have you join us. I'll connect after the meeting. I think I have your contact information. Thanks, Jeff. All right, and the last one is the Policy and Rules Committee, which we don't have a full committee. Blake and I met for a little bit last week and just said it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for us to move forward with much.
Without
until we
having
have
all the
a full
members here.
member. Same with JD and I met last week too and kind of felt the same way, except for basically how we're going to plan working with the Medical Cannabis Working Group, and kind of what that plan is
Yeah,
moving
'cause
forward,
we
so
do
that we're
have-
on a united front and we have a plan going into the next legislative session that feels a little bit more mobile, I guess.
Yeah, I think getting to them sooner rather than later will be helpful, because bills will start to be being formulated here, in not too long. But yeah, I think we'll definitely need a full group. And then I envision what will end up happening is recommendations from this board will then go to the Policy and Rules, and Policy and Rules will then run it from there through the chair and the co-chair of the board, but with the support of the chairs of each of the committees, so. But we definitely have two that we can already approach them about, that we discussed last month, right? Qualifying conditions.
Yes.
And form factors as well, so might be good to see.
They're meeting next week or next month, August, I want to say the 15th.
Might not be a bad idea to try to get in touch with them ahead of time, or whoever kind of helps organize those meetings, to see if you could at least send something in writing and I don't know if it'll make it on the agenda for that meeting, but something in writing that just says, hey, here's two of the things that we want to, address with you again in the ways we talked about,
Okay.
last month.
Yeah, great.
Cody, when you were saying that it's going to take about 6 months to kind of get this new board comfortable, they're going to be putting forth kind of the process by which you can petition for qualifying conditions. Do you see that coming together in the next 6 months?
Yeah, the hope is, and so one of the things that Jeremiah, we started having him work on that even before the board started, is to go through the statute, look at the aspects of the policy and the rules that this board needs to look, and so he started doing research. And so as now that they've started, those are obviously conversations that they need to have, and hopefully they can get to that point as soon as possible, knowing how long rules take, right? There's a couple of months at the minimum usually, so yeah, the hope is to do that as quick as possible, but they've also got a lot of other things they gotta get done. They gotta go to a licensing board meeting in August, which is gonna be doubly long and kind of things, so, but
They're getting paid, right?
they're getting paid.
All right, well,
So-
yeah,
Keep it
welcome
there
to the
as long
world.
as you want.
So, but yeah, they've got a lot of things to work on, but those are things that, especially things that are mentioned in statute that they need to get taken care of. We want to make sure that's a huge priority.
Right on. Well, I think one thing for our board to think about is the longer it takes those rules to get in place, the less time there's going to be able to petition to see how that process works or doesn't work. So I think we should just be mindful as a group, and if we still have conviction around the prior recommendation we made, I think we should just run that up the flagpole, because I think we all would agree here that based upon our recommendation, what the legislature ultimately passed was just a hair short of that, so.
Yeah. So point of clarification on the Policy and Rules Committee. I know right now it consists of the chairs of the other three committees. But I think it would strengthen that committee if, as people are available, or if a member of one of the other committees proposes an idea, that they might also participate in the Policy and Rules. I mean, it's so that it's more inclusive and less exclusive, kind of getting that.
It's an interesting committee in the fact that it is doing a lot of the heavy lifting for the drafting for what will get presented. But at the end of the day, what it really is, the committee members themselves are the ones designed to go and speak with the legislature and Health and Human Services Committee. Mostly it's so that they don't get inundated with a million people with a million
Right.
agendas coming in. As far as like working on the policy side of it, though, I think it can open and
Right.
it can just keep expanding and contracting as much as
Yes.
necessary to do it.
Yeah.
The one challenge we will have, though, is there's too many board members who are jumping in on that. We want to make sure that we don't meet a quorum.
Yeah,
So,
I would just say if there's something specific that's being worked on.
sure.
That was proposed by a member, then that member should probably.
Yep, I think that's right.
Yeah, and I mean, policy and rules is not going, as far as I think the way we designed it, is not going to be coming up with independent,
Oh, sure.
like policy
Yeah.
ideas, right?
Yeah.
That'll come from the individual committees. The board will then vote on it. Then the policy and rules committee will take it. But I do think, to your point, whoever proposed it should be prepared to come and present and speak on it.
Yeah.
As, you know, as well. But to Blake's point, we just gotta, I think for the committee itself, keep it the way it is, just so we don't run into quorum issues. But yeah, I would envision that if you put together an agenda topic, the board gave it a favorable recommendation, and you would then assist the policy and rules
Yeah.
committee to run it through the, you know, through the legislature, and not just someone else. And I also think too, like, even though right now we're saying like the chair of each committee is going to be who attends, if you're like, hey, this month I just can't make it, I'm sending so-and-so in my place,
Yeah.
I think that's absolutely fine as well. I don't think we need to be super strict about it. I think it was just more so we were strict about it in the sense that we didn't want to, you know, break the rule of a quorum and have Trevor get mad at us that we broke the open and public, you know.
No, I will.
Yeah.
But he won't be our problem for a little
It'll
while.
be Jeremiah.
Yeah.
It'll be Jeremiah.
No, he'll be a problem. He's gonna be on board. He'll be a problem.
Okay, Anthony texted me, I think, about research and education. I maybe should, is that appropriate?
He's on Anthony, you can go ahead and unmute if you want to make a comment.
Or I guess this is a note for later discussions, what he
Oh.
said. My bad. Sorry, I could have read the first line of that.
I can mention Sorry, I can mention it now if you'd like. It was really just to say that in regards to medical cannabis and cannabis in general, I think something interesting to research would be the numbers of post-disciplinary actions, or the state of Utah that governs police actions and their disciplinary actions against officers for narcotics, drugs, different things, and cannabis, and the amount of times that officers have been disciplined for use of cannabis in any form versus use of any other drug or narcotic classified by the state, just to see if officers, if there can be some correlation to officers avoiding cannabis because it's traceable, and then being pushed towards more intense narcotics or other things, like back, you know, a few years ago, but other things are on the market is in regards to spice and other things that are supposedly not traceable, but people unfortunately choose to go a different route to try and medicate themselves, and then losing their jobs or giving into addiction of things that are not remotely tested and proven the way that medical cannabis has been in this state and across the country.
Oh, I think that'd be really interesting. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I think that wraps up our committee updates. And that would bring us to our 2025 Utah Medical Cannabis Market Analysis presented by Dr. Cochran. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, glad I can be here. So for advancing the slides, do I just say?
You can just call me too.
Give him the sign.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Quick hand gesture.
Yeah.
There we go.
Right. So I'm a professor at the University of Utah School of Medicine and in the Division of Epidemiology. You can go to the next slide. So remind me how much time we have here. Is it?
Oh, you can take as much as you want. I think we're running early, so.
Oh, are you?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
fabulous. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll just move as quickly as I need to then.
Yeah.
So this was,
Time out.
oh, yeah.
Sorry.
Can they not hear me or something?
We'll need an extra 50 minutes for questions. I got a lot. It's good.
Well, you guys helped design the survey, do you remember?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so the, it
And
was,
just as a reminder, Jerry is also the sitting chair of the CMCR
Oh, okay.
too, so, yeah.
yep,
How'd you con Misty into taking that?
I think they tried and she said no, and then they were like, well, I guess we can ask Jerry that.
I think my department chair.
Said no.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, happy to be here. I think I've been on this meeting remotely before, but never in person. This room is much bigger in vivo than it is.
A new room.
Yeah.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah.
The other room seems smaller.
Yeah.
This is great.
Well, the other room was oppressive also. Like it just felt,
Use the CFS office, like
Mhm.
board meeting room as well, so it just has
Oh.
that feeling. But
And-
this,
Yeah.
this is
And
all about
please
like.
thank
how-
Lyrit and everybody else on your staff for everything they do.
Oh,
Yeah.
for sure, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and she was a major part of this. She was kind of the driver. But yeah, this was done as part of a contract. We were approached by, so this is the responsibility of the Department of Agriculture to do an annual market analysis survey. And this is separate than what was happening in DHHS. But we combined forces with DHHS, the contract, to do it together. Just in terms of disclosures, our research group only has grants from the federal government and then one small foundation. We don't really have any other risks or any other disclosures that we would need to provide here. So you can go to the next slide. So today I'm just going to go over, this probably looks like a research paper that you may have read before. We're going to look at the background, why we did it, some of the methods so you can understand kind of the context of the information that we're seeing. We're going to go over highlights in terms of the results. If you've seen the report, it's about 100 pages. There was a lot of different, there were 4 different surveys that were administered. There was some overlap. Then just kind of some key points, and then whatever questions folks have at the end, we'd be glad to field those. So if you want to go to the next one and the next one. So we're not going to spend time here. You guys all know these details, but the purpose of the market analysis survey really is an annual snapshot of how well the program is doing in terms of serving the population, in terms of access to product, access to pharmacies, satisfaction with those. And then we also added in some additional questions in the survey, which we'll talk about here in a second. It just helped us understand the patients and their experience with the product in the pharmacies. So we'll go ahead. So go again. So we talked about a bunch of different designs for this particular survey. This survey, and then we chose based on resources available. We decided to go with a cross-sectional survey, so a point in time. So none of the things that we'll talk about today have any sort of causation associated with them. The cross-sectional survey simply can understand correlations. As we mentioned, it's to evaluate patient engagement and satisfaction with the program. This survey was done electronically. We administered the survey for a little under 2 months. There was multiple iterations of the survey that went out. And it was IRB approved by the University of Utah IRB. It was also approved by the DHHS IRB. I think if in going forward with the change of departments now that if this survey were to happen again with us or whoever, it wouldn't actually require DHHS IRB approval because their only involvement in it was just sharing contact information.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't actually involved in the process of the research. So they did help us design the survey, but they were not involved in the collection of data, analysis of the data, and so forth. Go ahead to the next slide. So we only surveyed adults. So, all of the questions that were asked in this survey were self-report, right? So that is a limitation in and of itself. So it was all adults, and there were a couple of different groups that we surveyed. So the DHHS shared with us the contact information. And by the way, if people sign up to participate in the medical cannabis program in the state of Utah, they automatically consent to participate in research. Some people don't know that, but that's an important thing. Came up to our privacy office several times, people calling to express concerns about how their information was disclosed, and we were able to share with them the information that they already consented to participate in it. And then in addition, and so they shared with us active card holders, and then people who were at one time active card holders, but who had let their cards expire. So expired card holders. And then that list included about 150,000 individuals. And I'm going to throw up some air quotes here. We tried to match that in terms of sample size from the University of Utah medical record. So we went into the medical record with I'll say a phenotype or a kind of a profile of qualifying conditions. And we pulled out those individuals who had those qualifying conditions and who had contact information. We pulled out, as I said, about 100,000 individuals from University of Utah. And you'll see here, and you're probably thinking to yourself, well, that's a limitation because the U of U just serves kind of around here. And yeah, that is a limitation. So, but anyway, so we received those. Altogether, we sent about 250,000 emails over that period of time. And we did that. And plus we did some distribution in medical providers' offices who provide medical cannabis cards, as well as I think some of the pharmacies handed out flyers as well. So the reason I'm telling you that, we cannot calculate a response rate. It's somewhere north of 250,000 individuals. So that's
But the N is somewhere above 250,000.
No. The contacted people, what do you call the denominator? North of 250,000. Yeah. We cannot precisely estimate that because we don't know how many people were contacted about it. If we had not done the recruitment in the pharmacies and the medical clinics, we could have, but we were going for big numbers, and that was the desires to have a larger number. Incentives offered to individuals. We would have loved to have provided an incentive to everybody who completed a survey. That would have been super expensive. So we did a raffle, one $500 gift card and a couple of $250 gift cards. So, and those people were super excited when they were selected, as you can imagine. The next slide. What's that? There you go. Oh, awesome. Thank you. You were on the next slide. Okay, super. So you can see the survey groups here. And then say that again.
I was curious about the response rate.
We're going to get that just in a second. Yeah, we're just doing methods right now. So we'll hit the results in just a second. So kind of that second bullet down there. So the topics, we looked at medical, we asked people what medical conditions for which they were receiving medical cannabis. And if you look at the survey, we put some common conditions for which people take medical cannabis, but they're not approved conditions too. So we did kind of a gamut. I won't talk about this today. I guess that point is look at the full report. You'll see lots of interesting details in there about cannabis use patterns, program experience, satisfaction barriers, perceptions of laws, and so forth. And then the data analysis for this is super basic. It's just descriptive statistics. So, but we have shared that final data set with DHHS, and I guess it's now in UDAF. And that data set is, I don't know if it's public, it's totally anonymous, so it could be easily shared. So I think that if there was an interested public group, they could probably request that data from UDAF or from DHHS and do your own analysis on the different populations if you were interested. So let's keep going. Okay, let's jump into these results. So response rate, 14,600 individuals responded. We were really pleased with that, honestly. You can imagine it was not compensated in terms of like everybody who participated. Normally in these types of surveys, we'll get maybe 20% response when we're compensating. No compensation, and plus it was going out to just a massive amount of people. So you can see the distribution of the individuals who received or who responded to the survey. Most of the individuals were the active card holders. A little bit less than that were the expired card holders. Less than that, people. So the last two groups are the University of Utah sample. These were individuals who used medical cannabis but had never registered for a card. And the last one are people who had qualifying conditions but didn't have a card. So, and that's kind of, you can see that was the one of the small. Yeah.
What would you expect to be a typical response rate for something like this?
For 250,000 people for this design?
Yeah, for this design for
I think we're probably in that ballpark. I mean,
we're about 6%, right? So is that?
I'll say this. There are design. I mean, when like you watch the elections and they're doing all those national polls,
Yeah.
Those are representative surveys. They have margins of error and things like that.
Right.
The goal here was just as many people as we can.
I mean, the end value is still solid. I mean, look, 15,000 for an N is awesome.
It's a very large.
It will give you a good statistical analysis, but I am curious, like
representative.
Yeah, like ultimately, because if you break it down to active card holders at 7,000, you start getting to the smaller. And as you already pointed out, non-registered at 959. That's, even though that's active against 250,000, I mean, statistically, that wouldn't have much value at all in terms of its end value. And that's not an attack. It just simply is an observation that how I'm thinking about looking at the data.
This survey could be designed. I mean, the closer you get to causal inference, the more it costs.
Yeah.
And that gets
for
super
sure.
expensive. And that could be a consideration going forward in the future. And I mean, obviously, the University of Utah has the brain power to design and execute a survey like that. If that was ever the desire of the new steward, the new department steward of the program. So we are 100% open to doing something like that. But I will say, from what I understand, compared to the previous year's survey, this was much more on the mark in terms of asking the questions they were interested in and getting the information that they were hoping to understand. So
it's really great, by the way.
I don't. That's the reason we kind of queued it up with all the limitations there in the beginning, is because we do understand, and we wanted to, don't take it with a grain of salt, but there are limitations in the design of it. There are better designs to answer questions more specifically and with causation. So great comments. Okay, we can go to the next page. This is just demographics here. And we didn't ask a ton of demographics, but just kind of a flavor. Middle age, I think, is what we would call it there, with the different, tail ends of the distributions. Most people, fairly well-educated individuals who participate in the program and responding. I would say that could be a sign of response bias also, because you would have to have the internet access to all those kinds of things.
Primarily in Salt Lake versus out in the rural areas, et cetera. Yep.
And that's some college or some trade, right? That's all of that all the way up.
Yeah,
it's
basically
anything past high school.
Well, it's high school and applies.
Yeah, it qualifies.
So not bachelor's completed, it could be some college.
Yeah, they had some sort of higher education in there. So most people were insured. And again, that might be also a selection bias in terms of who we sampled, because University of Utah takes health insurance.
Yeah.
And it's hard to get care there without health insurance. Most people were white, about 80%, and that probably maps onto the state fairly well. And we do have the racial ethnic breakdown. And if you really wanted to dig into that, like subgroup analysis, it might be a fun thing to look at. There could be some, like, I don't know if the group who was at DHHS, I know what do they call them, the health disparities group there had asked for this survey, so they may be doing some sort of SDOH type analysis also. Because I imagine you would find those differences, particularly for rural urban. Okay, we can jump on to the next. So here's that representativeness for the state. You see the clustering in kind of our 5-county area here. Again, that is probably the sample, but it's also, this is where people live in the state of Utah too. But you can see that it reached across many counties in the state. And again, this could be broken out if somebody was really interested. You could do county level analysis type thing. So anyways, let's keep going. And here's just the other two groups. Again, they're mapping on the same. They're clustering in kind of the 5-county area here that we all live in. So, okay, let's keep going. So so we asked people about the conditions for which they were taking the medical cannabis product or the cannabis product. And let me just put in one little nuance here. The non-registered individuals, they were asked a very specific and crafted question about use of cannabis products for medical purposes. Okay, it wasn't just any cannabis use. It was, whatever product or whatever you're doing with cannabis, is it for, medical reasons? So
Did that include products that they're taking, like when they go buy a sleep gummy from, just a pharmacy? Not a medical cannabis pharmacy, because
we asked them about cannabis product. Are you talking about like
so I can buy
OTC kind of?
Well, so I can go buy a hemp sleep gummy, and in the state of Utah, I can have up to 5 milligrams of THC.
We didn't have to go down that level.
Because you're non-registered for sleep immediately looks to me like people who are taking sleep gummies that are from the hemp market,
Sure.
not buying black market sleep gummies or something along those lines, right?
Sure. Yeah. Right.
Just real quick, were there other choices besides those 5?
Yeah, there was a bunch. Yeah. Again, if you open that full survey or the full report, you'll see all those in there. These are just the top 5. So anyways, and you see a lot of crossover, and you kind of see the kind of clustering of the conditions. So we can keep going if you'd like. So active card holders, pretty frequent. Well, I'll just say this: frequent use. People who have their cards use it, right? About 17% are mentioned going out of state to out-of-state pharmacies or dispensaries or whatever you want to call them to get their products. We can keep going. Access and satisfaction. People really like the program here in Utah. I mean, if they're going to the pharmacies, I'll say over the strongest or the general feeling is that they like the cannabis, or they like the products, they like the pharmacy, they like the services that they get there. So that's a good sign.
So licensing board, that's an important point of data, because the majority of the respondents are in Salt Lake, and Salt Lake has more pharmacies than anywhere else in Utah, right? And so for those that are not happy about access, it's probably the lower numbers that are outside where we have less pharmacies. And so
you could pull the data and look at, you could actually answer that question using the data if you would like.
Anyway, so that as we consider licensing issues in the future, whether or not we have one more coming, if there's ever a question as to whether we should get more, this is the type of data that will inform us as to what that looks like, I think.
And if there was an interest, we're kind of talking to you guys right now, UDAF, if you want us to do it again in the future or not, whoever does it though, you could ask those very specific questions, like those kinds of questions, that level of detail, you could definitely program into a survey like this, the next iteration, and you could actually get from the horse's mouth, as it were. So let's keep going.
Can I make one more comment? Sorry, I'm speaking so much. This
No,
is
you're
your
good.
presentation. I apologize.
No, it's all good.
The quality of product stat was very strong, 90%. That's better than anything I've seen in any other market. So good on the program. We're winning on that, right?
Yeah, and I do think there's a certain amount. I shouldn't have looked around the table.
As a comparison against outside of state.
I
So
have personal opinions.
sure. I mean, and look, that doesn't mean all products good. It just simply means, look, comparatively, people are pretty happy
No, that
with
sounds
the
good.
quality
I
of their
agree.
product.
No,
You could
that is
pull,
promising.
you could analyze that question though too. People who are going outside of the state for their product you could look at their satisfaction in this data set and see if it's lower or higher. And you could compare those two groups.
Thanks.
All kinds of interesting questions that could happen for the creative mind.
Mhm.
So anyway, and this is what you guys know already. Product, the price of the product is considered a barrier. You can see here the smallest proportion of that last bullet is that the individuals who never had cost be an issue were the smallest group. Probably not a lot to say there. So expired card holders, so people who had a card once upon a time and were still using the product, a cannabis product for or cannabis for a medical condition. So a lot of people continue to use cannabis products, which is probably speaks to the benefit for their health. And you can see the product cost again being a driver to the non-renewal, a smaller proportion and registration complexity, and then some legal concern that we did. We actually have a number of legal concerns, and it could be again an analysis here, subset this group and look at legal concerns that they had. So we can go to the next slide. So concerns about the program, it was product restrictions, the policy issues about bringing in products from across state lines were issues. The non-smoking was about a third of the individuals. About a third said there was issues related to the number of pharmacies cited. Well, it would be interesting. You could break that out also by county. We did, by the county of the individuals and see if those are the people who live in those outlying counties. And then about a third of individuals had concerns about not being able to cultivate their own products at home. So, okay, we'll go to the next slide. So these are the non-registered, so individuals who are using a cannabis product but had never had a card or reported to have never had a card. Use it very frequently. About half of them are obtaining those products out of state. Barriers to enrollment, like why? So that cost it's descriptive of its cost, like medical provider visit and enrollment in the program. Lack of program awareness. They just didn't know enough about the program, the cost of the product. And then, as you would expect, privacy concerns, and then registration complexity. Go to the next slide. So people who had qualifying condition but did not use did not use cannabis. It was super interesting. They must not drive on the freeway because not knowing about the program, it seems pretty well advertised.
Maybe not enough material at the UAU hospitals.
Yeah, maybe what it is. It's interesting. At the community clinics that we have about the year before last, we did the count, 2,000 patients who are on cannabis products in the community clinic. So I don't know, of the hundreds of thousands, it's really a tiny amount who are using it. So UVU providers aren't the most prolific in terms of getting cannabis to their patients.
So
helping patients.
In the long ago, almost feels like a different life now. I worked in pharma.
Oh.
And when we did statistical analysis of how many reps we would have to go visit doctors' offices as to how they correspond to how many actually take those particular drugs and knew about them.
Okay.
It was so much higher when doctors talk about particular products, as you would suspect, which is why pharma did it, right? Of course. Sure. If groups like UMA and others don't talk about cannabis,
people aren't going to know.
People aren't going to know. And it doesn't matter whether you're educated or not. Even if there's a billboard, it doesn't mean much unless your provider is helping you to know. So.
And my thing about the billboard was just kind of a joke.
No, but it's a solid point, right? Like, yeah.
Yeah. But there does seem to be an information issue. I don't know, has anybody seen that paper that we did a while ago? That the patients who were less likely to kind of have non-medical use of cannabis were more likely to rely on state sources. So if a patient can engage with state, like the state website and the state information, it reduce, I think it's like, I can't remember if it's 40% or it's a pretty good chunk reduction of the likelihood that somebody will
Mhm.
engage in some sort of misuse of a cannabis product. So anyway. Um, what's that?
That's just interesting to me.
Yeah. And then just not interested, and then concerned about negative or mental health effects from the product. So those could be also things with regard to talking with the person issuing the card, or even, at the pharmacies themselves. So we can keep going here. So cross group findings, this is kind of like a little bit of a synthesis. So obviously cost is something that came up a lot. Program awareness for eligible patients. The leakage, we called leakage the idea of people to use outside the program. And then high satisfaction. Really people, when they participate in the program, it does seem like it does serve their needs, is what it seems. But that also is a selection bias. If I stay in the program, it's because I like the program, right? If I don't stay in the program, it's because maybe something didn't work for me. So anyways, we can keep going. So just a couple of points of discussion here. People that are using the products are using them fairly regularly. As I mentioned, people really like the products. There are people, if they are part of the program, they are, mostly buying it from or gaining access to their products through the pharmacies. And again, the cost barrier. So we can keep going down. So if we were going to make some policy recommendations, to the next slide. And I think you guys have this is happening a little bit. The costs for some things are coming down. That's really important. I bet if you asked a patient next year, they would want to see the cost keep coming down. One of the things that was mentioned to us recently by Sarah Lelos is the idea of tracking, like if a policy change happens over time, to understand what the impact or what the comment from the patient is. So if you lower the prices this year, do patients actually realize the prices are lowered? Does it help the patients gain more access? Again, that's a little bit of a different study design. Well, you could ask it in a cross-sectional study, but you could ask it really well in a different kind of study. So simplifying enrollment, it seems like complexity was a thing. And then that outside of the program use, it seems like that does seem to be something that probably should be addressed. So at that, you can go to the next slide. That's it. There's my email address for people online if they want to email me, or we can ask more questions here if y'all have them.
Well, first a comment. So if you look at those who are typically using cannabis medically, and we discuss this on the board all the time, if they leave the program, it's not like they stop using cannabis. And so every single time I see numbers where they start to show that people use cannabis products, but the cost is too high, they're used to buying it from their plug, right? They're used to buying from their drug dealer. And so that there's a direct, I'm sure we can statistically figure this out pretty quickly, but there's a direct correlation to their perception of what cost should be based on where they're buying from.
Oh, that's interesting.
And so,
that's a great idea. That would be a fabulous thing to study, just so you know.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
And so the reason I think about it that way is because you could actually address almost three of those issues in the same study, because that would address what that looks like. And that speaks directly to our education group, because, well, why does regulated cannabis cost more than what you're buying from your drug dealer, essentially, right? And there are reasons why that happens. That doesn't mean the costs are not too high. It just means that
patients are not educated about the safety of the program and the difference between cannabis you get from a plug and cannabis you get from a pharmacy that's been tested.
That's right. Well, I think there's also education to be done around like other markets too. Like why, if you go to Colorado, the pricing is what it is in Colorado versus what it is here. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong or indifferent, right? It's just the differences between them.
Wendover,
If you go,
Mesquite,
those other places.
Dinosaur.
Just understanding like, why and, those types of things as well. Because cost, I think, will always be cited as one of the number one issues, right? Until health insurance covers it, until you can subsidize it, it's expensive. But there's also markets where, talk about the Michigan market. I've been talking to some folks about what it'll cost there, and fantastic for the consumer, but like, what's the trade-off, generally, right, for the health of for the industry too. So I think cost is always going to be a big topic, but I think it's more nuanced than that too.
Well, I mean, from the study, it said 90% were satisfied with the quality of their product, right?
But I
So-
think again, it's to what Mr. Cochran said, or Dr. Cochran said,
Right,
like,
right.
because they've stayed in the program, it's working for them. Of
Mhm.
course, that's what they're likely to say. But you also hear people anecdotally say, I go to other markets to either get form factors I can't get here, or a perception about quality and whatever. And I think quality is a bit in the eye of the beholder, but there can be some objectivity to it as, you know, as well. So I think those are important, you know, important data points. I just think it's great that a study like these studies continue to be done, because they're illuminating, but there's starting to be, I think, trends in the data for sure. I mean, the one that came out last year, I think, is not too dissimilar to what, you know, in terms of the overall results is showing, right? So I think it shows that the program's working for many, but for many, it's also not, and it's split kind of down the middle.
One other thing, just as an observation, so Mississippi just released one of their reports around this. And so it's interesting, it's sort of opposite here than it is in Mississippi. So in Mississippi, the pharmacists all fight against the medical program. They don't want to participate. The pharmacists worry about their licenses, but medical doctors have no problem, and everybody recommends cannabis versus a litany of other drugs that, you know, would normally be in there. So, and what they have found, so to this exact point, they have found that they have been able to prescribe less drugs. The insurance isn't costing as much when they've moved to cannabis. And even though the medical products are more expensive, they're ultimately saving money versus all the other drugs they were taking.
Do the pharmacists have a problem with it because they're not getting the dispensing fees for the other medications, like business?
That's a really, so it's a little bit of a confounder when you look at it, but the biggest thing is their licensing board there won't support it. They're like, versus, you know, basically you can be a pharmacist here and our licensing board said, we just follow the state law and we're not worried about our license, right? And so, yeah.
Cool. There was a question over here.
Yeah, I was just wondering, do you do these surveys periodically, and is this something that you do that's self-funded, or does the organization fund it? I'm just curious about future surveys and their potential.
Yeah, so this particular one was done at the request of the Department of Agriculture, because I think they're supposed to do one every year, something like that. And so they bring in different contractors. We just happen to be the contractor this year.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, so if whoever they decide to contract with this year will be able to, you know, re-administer this survey, you know, design it in terms of the population and things like that. So anyway, yeah.
The data's great.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing it.
Yeah, no, yeah, it was a fun survey. It was yeah. It was an intense survey to do with all those respondents.
I think it introduces a challenge that whoever is hired as, you know, when you step down,
as the interim
the new director of the CMCR, how to increase awareness of the medical cannabis program in the university healthcare setting.
Oh yeah, that's interesting.
You know, how to better integrate with, you know, programs like
Clinical
this in the
care.
state.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Yeah, that's really interesting. Fortunately, on our search committee, we do have the chair of the Department of Family Medicine, and he's fabulous. He's a huge proponent, and so that's where a lot of this it's in the clinics. The clinics that he's kind of over that would probably do a lot of this work. So hopefully, we're making partnerships, right? That will last and things like that. So anyway, great comment. That's really important. Well, thanks for letting me come, everybody. Thank you for the invitation. So
thanks, Doctor.
Appreciate it.
Can I ask one question, a little off topic, and you don't have to answer, obviously. Does the
can we turn off the owl first?
Does the med school now have a section on cannabis that they teach upcoming
like
doctors?
in the curriculum? I think they do. I don't really know. I'm not in the.
Ask them to in law, so.
I know we asked them to. Well, that's part of the reason I'm asking is because I haven't heard.
Better be, so.
I have not heard an update, and
Let's check.
Yeah, that's a great question.
I have also requested and I've never gotten a response.
the last I saw was a one pager. Essentially, they took 10 minutes and they're like, cannabis exists.
Yeah.
And that was pretty much the
That's
education.
what I thought. That's what I thought it was a very short module on it. We do have a new dean, a brand new dean of the medical school, so it's probably prime time to, her name is Dunn. I'm
Yeah.
making that up. I can't
I don't
remember.
know.
Yeah, I could, if she was sitting here, I would know I can't remember the name offhand. So,
Almost, I'll email you.
yeah, just, yeah.
Misty, it sounds like you, Director Misty, and
Well, of the CMC, of the
Yeah.
McRack.
Yeah.
Yes.
right.
Not dean of medical school.
Yeah, not dean of medical school, but
That's
in conjunction with us, education and so forth, we should be able to assist if they have found themselves unable to move that module forward.
Yeah, and in a meaningful way, right?
In a meeting, well, yeah, look, I don't, completing the law is just one checkbox, but it would be much better for them to actually have some knowledge about minor cannabinoids and mechanism of action and how it actually works.
We are in the pharmacy curriculum, I can, 'cause
Correct.
I teach it.
I know. Well, this is why I'm looking at you, wink, wink on all this, because I know it's being done, and there are other states that are doing this already as well. I would love Utah to not fall behind in this particular issue.
I know they have a nice continuing education program that you can pay to take, but
And
Anyway.
actually, I think that might be what the law that we passed said, was it had to be in the
the CE.
CME.
Oh, really? They do have a CE program. I know you have to pay, at least the one I've seen, that you have to pay for it, but anyway.
It's funny to me that if you're required like to have that as continuing education credit and it's recognized as being valid, it wouldn't be part of the main curriculum, also at least a blurb about it.
To the core, yeah.
Right, as part of the core, so.
Yep.
Anyway, just,
Well, thank you.
thank
guys.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
very much. Thanks for
See
your
y'all
time.
later.
All right, moving on. Next meeting's agenda. I know we've already talked about advertising from industry, so we'll definitely get that added. Does anyone have any items they want to present next month?
Just know your committees are gonna be asked.
I thought, for the patient, or for the research and education, I mean, I don't know if it really applies, but, or if anyone's even interested, but have you seen a medical card? Have you seen a child's medical card? Is that something that the board would want to see and have me present?
I would like to see that actually.
Because they get looked at funny even when I go to a pharmacy, because they're so rare.
Yep.
So I would be happy to present that as part of the committee reviews.
Yeah.
Actual physical appearance,
Mhm.
it's pretty,
Well, because
pretty lame, I think. I think you could- with very little effort, you could make it really.
they did redesign it recently. I'm happier with it. It's pretty
There's a
convenient.
new- wait, since when did you get a new?
Maybe a year ago? Is that when
Yeah.
they redesigned it?
Yes.
Yeah.
About
So I
it.
want to make sure I have the this version.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
and based on what was just discussed as the take homes, and I would personally appreciate this too, is a refresher on how to renew for those of us whose caregiver cards have recently expired.
Oh, maybe we
and
walk
are
through
navigating that
processes like
process, yes.
Yeah.
Cause I'm figuring that out right now,
It is a daunting process.
yes.
Mhm.
Well, and one of
The
the
EPS
barriers
is very
identified in the
overwhelming.
Survey was people wanted a simplification of the enrollment
Right,
process. So it's understanding the current process, we
Mhm.
can look at ideas for simplification.
Okay.
And I mean, I agree wholeheartedly, and I mean,
Do you think we could have some-
we've made efforts to simplify the fee structure. And then we've kind of gone back on that, because the fees went back to what they were,
Card,
so.
rather than.
Well, I can redact my information. Online, but if you have several cards, that's great.
And I still don't understand where that fee came
Show
from.
the meetings there.
It was never,
For sure.
Talk to them.
yeah. Cody, we're talking about you.
I'm already mad at this group anyway. My son supposedly scored an 89 and I can't see it. Because it stopped working. So.
Sorry.
We should just have to.
dismissed
it.
Yeah, it's not working like the event before it.
Let's go back to your office.
Right.
Pull it up on the desk.
But-
No, I think
They're recorded.
I think Missy
Yeah.
was interested to know about why the fee went from the patient fee went from $150 to back to $3.
Oh, so a couple of different things, there. So, part of it is that the $1.50 side that was already there will stay with the processes that fall underneath the board and what used to be DHHS to pay for that aspect of it, right? The other $1.50 is to go into the portion for the Department of Agriculture side. Also to be, there's research that came with the wording on that as well. So our lab, you guys, a little bit there. There's also an increase in on revenue that comes in from the specialized product aspect of things too, type of thing. So it's an overall catch up because of the ICS, the EBS, and we've been running in the black or in the red for like 3 years because of cost of to the ICS and stuff like that. So it's a catch up.
So Missy, so when Brandon was here last time, basically they committed to keep looking at the fee. Like, I totally appreciate the balance. Like, they didn't have control of the funding. They were actually running the program. Most of the funding wasn't going to them. And now they're like, okay, but what does it actually take to run this? We've been running in the red. We don't actually know a lot of this. A rebalancing, I think, was appropriate, but I'm holding you guys to, we'll keep looking at it because it may turn out there, because if they get a massive surplus, if that's the case, then there's no reason to keep doing it.
We would have much rather had the opportunity to converse with the lawmakers the year that they cut it in half. Right, the Department of Agriculture wasn't approaching us, and the Department of Health at that time just agreed to that, and we're like, we could have used some money, even though it was actually borrowing money from them to get through some things, right? But it just got kind of like, and I think that was probably the start of it at that point to come back there. But then this last year actually was an influx, if you will. I mean, I won't say it's an influx because we don't know what we're going to be getting yet. But as far as that goes, but like all these fixes that went out there to try and get us into a good spot actually passed for a change type of thing. And so to Blake's point, yeah, we're already starting to, I mean, our budget year, as you guys know, just started there, but we're already starting to see some things. We haven't hired a lot of people back that have left and things like that. So there's some catch up, as I mentioned, type of thing with other labs going, like, you know, we've got to make sure that, also, like I said, our lab is an important piece of this program, I think, because everybody would admit to that. So, but they're not going to be bringing any revenue in either because they won't be, if we get the second lab and stuff like that. So we're just trying to figure it out. Once we get Ames and the ICS all out of the way, I think that is definitely the key to be able to just drop a lot of things a lot because
And one of the, you know, I don't know why I'm sitting here just defending ag, but
that's first.
But what I would say is, you know, when originally all these arguments were first getting made and the original cut got made, I was actually against how much it got cut. Not that it should have been cut, but the fact that ag didn't have a choice in that the health just approved it. I'm like, I know that you're not able to pay everything on every side of the fence with that large of a cut. And this is going to come back to us. And so the way that I felt about this, it came back. And so, but what I'd love to get is now current about what that actually looks like. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I just think it warrants re-review once things are balanced and established.
Yeah, we'll actually re-review it starting about this October. I mean, it's obviously very initial, right? And everything, and we'll see where that goes. We can kind of make a pretty good estimate just based on numbers from last year. We've seen an increase in patients, obviously, and we'll be able to be right close to that, right? I mean, for the most part, the amount of purchases at the pharmacies, it obviously coincides with the number of patients, and it stays pretty regular with that the last couple of years. So we think we could be there. I can report, I just got a report a minute ago from our specialized products team, and this is where I'm a little bit excited other than the work that goes with this, because we now regulate every single store in the state, no matter what they sell. You know, our revenue in the first couple of months is up to $467,200 on just that new specialized product thing, right? Which no one can define really. But that's gonna be the thing that really takes.
Is that from like the taxes? Like,
No, that's so there's a HB 385, like one of JD's bills before a 389 was what they call a specialized product. And so anything that has an ingredient or makes the claim that it could physiologically affect you at any store, and which is the problem, right? A little bit now falls underneath us as a specialized product is how they defined it, and then the stores have to register with us to set. And so like,
Oh, it's kind of like what it was before to like sell a hemp derived product. You had
yeah,
to,
but so this
but
now
now you have
includes everything from tobacco,
yeah,
just like
much
a
bigger
cigarette store,
yeah,
like
much
tobacco
bigger,
to like,
yeah.
your vape shops and stuff like that. And
So you got a lot more folks that are registering and paying a fee, so it's creating a lot more revenue.
yeah, along with
Can some of that revenue be used to on regulation for the medical cannabis program and then vice versa,
Yes,
right? Like,
yeah, so there's a mix, and there are some specifics that each one has to do, such as research
Yeah.
for on this side, and there's also some things for education on that side and stuff, but it'll all come underneath the patient fund is where
Okay.
both of those come through. So then at the
so cannabis and all specialized products will come under that fund.
Mhm. Yeah,
And then
with
that fund will be
the
used,
production
that
side.
fund will be used to just regulate, yeah, then the production side, but
Yeah.
like from a revenue standpoint of like the end seller,
Mhm.
that all comes under the patient fund, and then that'll be used to administer the entire specialized products division,
Yeah.
excluding production.
Yeah.
And production will be all from like licensing fees and stuff like that and testing fees.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
But then part of it is you have to make up the loss that you're gonna have for testing fees. when those
Yeah,
places
so
all
they're
happen.
already did that stuff, and then we will actually, we feel so far in initial talks. So we'll see how it ends up being, is that to combine the patient and the patient fund and the production fund overall, and just have that there and like separate everything out. So it's a pain in the rear end to keep track of. Your timesheet is the only thing, but where you have to code it to, but overall, as far as budget goes, I'd much rather have it that way and keep the cannabis separate from the other ones, because then it just makes more sense to me. And we're not like taking anything from anybody, but so far, I'm more excited about this money again on the specialized products there. There's a lot of work, but it's like more quantity work versus quality. It's going to be not easy. There's just going to be a lot of it, but it'll be easier than what we deal with. And so I hate to say it that way because it makes me sound bad, but we should see a huge revenue that'll take care of the kratom stuff and the hemp stuff, and there shouldn't be anything, and then pay for that side of its aims and things too. But yeah, so it was, like I said, almost a perfect storm type of thing. Like for one time in our lives, we asked for a bunch of things, hoping one would go through, and they all were like,
Wonder what that's like.
yeah, that's the first time. I'm sure it'll blow up in her face sooner or later.
Yeah, be careful what you.
Right.
Great, I think that wraps up anything we need to add to our next meeting's agenda. I think then
Motion to adjourn.
thank you, that part. So it is. Thank you, everybody.
I know you need to go see your son. Can I have 5 minutes with you?
So I've been.
He's like, it's over now. I have to watch